Hello ladies and gentlemen, Panzer here, and today we're taking a look at Viktor Kovalchev's Blue Estate. What can I say about this game? Well, dancing lady in the main menu. It's a rail shooter. No, wait, come back. No, it's a rail shooter, yes, but unlike recent rail shooters, i.e. Rambo the video game, it is one that actually has a well put together story. Now, I know the Rambo video game was based on the Rambo movie, so nothing against the story in the movie, but it is definitely a game based on a book. I suppose that gives it some sort of credibility as well, but it has a lot of story-driven elements to it. It is probably the most story-driven rail shooter I've ever played. Now, I've played a fair amount of the first chapter already. Actually, this is the second chapter. So we're going to jump back to the first chapter and show you what the game is all about. Now, it does seem like the sort of game that would work on a tablet, mainly because of all the swiping and so forth. Now, I want to avoid a bit of story spoilers, so I'm going to skip that.
Don Luciano prized an eye for business above his son Tony's view of the world through the sights of his gun. He'd given him the nightclub to run to get him back on the high road. But Kim Bong-sik had kidnapped my client Cherry Pops, the only human Tony Luciano had ever warmed up to. And Tony couldn't even spell negotiation.
Right, so as you can see right here, a swipe. Yeah. That's the sort of thing that would work on a tablet very well. However, for a rail shooter, especially one that requires a decent amount of reaction rate, I wouldn't say you need a good reaction speed. Everything seems to move fairly slowly. But you do have the option of using arrow keys, which I would recommend, because that allows you to actually do these actions without shooting. So here we go. Points for everything, of course.
That speaks a word of English. Tell them loopy twins you work for that I'm here for what's mine. Oh, did you hear me? I said, bring me Cherry Pops, or this Desert Eagle's gonna say it louder. 1, 2...
Diplomacy and tolerance weren't numbered in Tony's talents. He liked to shoot first and ask, well, he just liked to shoot. He wasn't much for questions.
It is the sort of game you can play one-handed, though. And there's that, with his hair going in his face. Now, every character that you play as, I've played as 2 different characters so far, has its own sort of quick time event, I suppose, that's unique to them. And you can see, pretty bog standard sort of rail shooter so far. But I feel that this is one that's carried very strongly by its story. And of course, the writing, well, let's put it this way. It is going to be offensive to some people in some way. After all, they do make use of a lot of stereotypes, but they do seem to make fun of just about everything. So whether or not it's meant to be deliberately offensive or not is hard to say. But I don't believe that's the case. And of course, look, boobs.
Whoa, whoa. What kind of freaky joint is this? It's ain't natural.
But this basically does set the tone for the game. This entire scene right here, this is the tone for the game. There's slow-mo, there's points for headshots or nut shots, if I can probably try to get one. There we go. And little quick time sections like this, where shoot them in quick succession, but of course I missed, as I would. But anybody who's half decent at shooting with a mouse should have no problem with this game, frankly. There is a little bit of an auto-aim. As you can see, it does snap to the target when you're aiming in their general vicinity, which is good for picking out targets far away. And everything sort of has this kind of, yeah, graphic novel look to it. Definitely not getting points for accuracy here. It does get a little annoying when they duck slightly, I will say that.
Give me a second to reload, I'll give you a third eye.
Voice acting is okay. It's not the best voice acting I've heard. It does get a little... It does seem a little bit sketchy in some places. But it's well recorded at least. The actual audio quality is not bad. So, based on what you've seen already, as far as rail shooters go, it's not a bad one though. I mean, it is a little bit simple for anybody who's good at aiming in any way. Especially if you are an FPS player, this is going to be fairly easy for you. But that's the thing though, it might be good for a rail shooter, but it is still a rail shooter.
You call that service?
And this is sort of a genre that's still... It's kind of past its time, I suppose. So it seems a little odd that they would make this one, but I don't see any other way for them to actually do it. Which is kind of sad. Because it seems like one that would be a fairly enjoyable game. In fact, probably a very enjoyable read, just because of the writing itself, but to make a rail shooter in this day and age is still strange, which is still the same problem that Rambo the video game had, even though that was not the best example of the genre, I will say. Now, of course, there is cover, but cover itself is only available in certain areas, so it still depends on you being a decent enough shot for the most part. Unless, of course, you're using a shotgun, in which case aiming is fairly optional. So there you have it. It's kind of an odd title, really. A rail shooter that's actually good, with a decent sense of humor, as you can see. You couldn't time that better, honestly. I didn't time that at all. Toilet humor.
Christ. Ain't you heard of a courtesy flush? What are you looking at? Damn it.
And even if there are QTE sequences, there aren't instant fail. You know, there's no instant failure state for any of them, as far as I can tell. You can still just shoot your way out of any situation, which, funnily enough, is a decent enough metaphor for the entire story. So, there.
Oof, smells like steamed vegetables in here.
So, could I recommend it? It's a tricky one, because I don't know if I'd recommend any rail shooter in this day and age, but I guess if you're looking for a rail shooter, this isn't a bad one to pick up. The humor itself might be a little bit crude for the most part, but it is decently well written, it looks pretty good, and it plays a hell of a lot better than any other recent rail shooters did. So, not a bad game overall. But yes, I do find it difficult to recommend any rail shooter at this stage. Unless, of course, it's at an arcade. I mean, arcade seems to be the place where this would go, but this is just, it's on PC, so it makes very little sense. Kinda hard to justify this game existing at all, really. But yes, if you have to play a rail shooter, this is probably one of the better ones.
This place is riding my last nerve.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Panzer taking a look at Blue Estate, now available on Steam for $13 or your regional equivalent currency. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.